Hello, welcome to the welcome to the Sarcastic Centrists podcast. I'm Charles.
I'm Nick, and we are cynical. Don't forget about that.
I don't know how cynical I am. I try not to be too cynical.
That's true, actually. Despite how sarcastic you are. You're like a weird optimist who thinks, like, all kinds of bad things are gonna happen, but, like, while not thinking that they are gonna happen.
I think that excessive cynicism can become dangerous.
That's true.
Like, it's important to be able to criticize the society in which you live, but when you start thinking that your society's just awful when it's not, or even if it is, if you're just like, oh, things are just horrible, it's not productive and it's probably destructive.
Someone's been watching Jordan Peterson.
Not this past week.
Well, I didn't say that last week, but anyway, that's one of the things that he talks about a lot. So our intro story is this past week, massive pedophile Jeffrey Epstein got suicided in his Suicide Watch 24/7 solitary confinement cell. While the cameras just happened to be turned off at that second.
So here's what I've heard about this story so far, which is our topic of discussion.
Yeah,
I heard that he committed suicide and that there's suspicion that he didn't commit suicide. That's about it.
So, yeah, the story isn't, or our story for discussion, isn't so much about that so much as it is, after that happened, everybody was like, oh, the Clintons did it, obviously. Okay, before I get into that, one thing that is, it's been surprising how many people are almost universally, he obviously didn't kill himself.
I heard that the cameras were conveniently off when he killed himself.
Yes.
Well, that when he hung himself while on Suicide Watch.
With whatever hanging device he used. I guess, like,
because
do they have bed sheets in jail?
Didn't they take his shoelaces and his belt? So
they
that
do that to
everyone
when you go in jail.
I don't know. I haven't looked into this. I learned about it yesterday, and I've been busy.
Yeah, me too. But our mutual friend has been sending me a stream of information constantly. So anyway, yeah, both the right and the left are in complete agreement that he did not kill himself. He got suicided, and it's kind of weird because...
Wait, the right and the left are in total agreement here?
Yes.
Like, the fringe and the center?
Far, far, far left, just... I think they think he killed himself. But other than that, like, pretty much...
Mainstream media and social media? The entire American people agree on something?
I'll get to social media in a second, because that's the main story, but pretty much everyone's in agreement that he didn't kill himself. He got taken out of the picture.
He got suicided
because he had dirt on, he had scum on all kinds of billionaires and royalty of different countries, and like he could take down some people. So they didn't like that. And anyway,
I guess he lost the Game of Thrones.
Yes, he lost. Wait, is it?
When you play,
I was like,
when you
play the Game of Thrones, you win or you lose. That's what I was like, and then I'm like, no, that's dumb. Since you win or you die, not you win or you lose. That's all games.
When you play a game of chess, you
win or you lose. Anyway, so hashtag Clinton body count has been a thing for a while because they have a tendency to make people die who are around them. Like, there's been this list that's been maintained for a while, like a few years, more than a few years, like since his term in office. And it's like hundreds of people around them have just died through two gunshots to the back of the head suicide. I'm not kidding. That was ruled a suicide. And
2 gunshots to the back of the head?
Yeah, because, he was having an affair with the person or something. And it's literally like, Game of Thrones style.
No, they'd cover up their suicides better. You have to make it look believable.
Right,
it's hanging themselves.
It's like Game of Thrones, but they would lose really fast.
I don't know. I think they'd do pretty well in the Game of Thrones.
They probably would. I mean, they're still out there.
Right.
Anyway, so anytime something like this happened, when he was first caught, he was like, everyone was like, hashtag Clinton body count on Twitter, and people were making jokes until like Hillary Clinton says, I'm so sorry for his tragic demise on 2:30 on the Friday. Stuff like that.
2:33 actually.
Whatever.
No, that's, she knows it down to the minute.
Yeah, that's the joke. So Twitter, they stopped that hashtag, and suddenly, like, because it was high and trending, and
right.
Suddenly it got replaced by Trump body count, and some enterprising Googlers found a way to compare like the number of searches and where the searches were coming from for both of those hashtags, and Clinton body count is like it's at the peak at like 100% or something, starting from like a couple of years ago, and Trump body count is at like 1%, and then you can see where it's from, and Clinton body count is from the entire country, and like some states have it more or less, you can see it by the shade of blue, and then Clinton body count or Trump body count is only in California. It's hilarious. It's only in Silicon Valley. It's the most obvious fake thing I've ever seen.
It's a real thing in Silicon Valley.
Well, yeah, if you're Twitter, it's completely manufactured.
Right.
Twitter's
a strange thing.
Twitter is a strange thing.
Because in a way, it's all completely manufactured, and even the idea that we don't want it to be manufactured is strange. Like, if you think about traditional media, whatever that is, but if you think about traditional media, it's supposed to be manufactured, at least to some degree. Like, a newspaper article is supposed to be well written and edited. Like, it's not just supposed to happen organically.
Well, ideally,
thing.
It's not biased.
Right.
It's supposed to be Walter Cronkite telling you what happened.
And that's the way it was.
But that died, years ago. Decades ago.
Was that ever really a thing, though? I don't know.
No. And I think that there's a quote from him saying such. Like there's always a little bit of bias, but like since
there was a period of a few decades where journalists strove to be unbiased, and there was a period where like they didn't vote because they didn't want to form an opinion. They wanted to avoid forming opinions, and you have to form an opinion to vote.
Journalists didn't vote? Yeah. That seems like a kind of dumb concept, but okay. I get the intent, but it's dumb. Shut up. Shut up, journalists from 50 years ago.
It's possible to have an opinion and still not vote. But the underlying
it's also possible to not have an opinion that biases you and then vote.
Or like you vote so you're aware of your bias.
Right. You like.
But then you have to try to
write
overcorrect
something that's
for
completely unbiased. You just have to try. And journalists now are just like most of the major internet only news sites are complete trash either side of the spectrum. There's a couple that are more or less legit, but like it's only because they admit that they're biased, so that you can tell what parts are like opinion and what parts are fact. Like
and basically all newspapers used to be like that, like before the 20th century. Like
you mean before the 21st?
No, I mean before the 20th.
Oh, really?
Like way back before yellow journalism really became a thing around 1900. It was just assumed that of course newspapers have a bias and a perspective, and they declare their perspective, and you'd buy different newspapers with different points of view, or just buy the one that you liked or whatever. But it was just assumed, like, they all just proclaimed their bias.
Interesting.
But then
my newspaper history isn't that great, I have to admit.
I think it was in the early 20th century that they started trying to be unbiased and objective, to like modernize as part of progressive
to compete
ideal.
With TV and radio.
I think before TV, maybe to compete with radio, but I think it was more because the industry had become so tainted, because it had gotten so mudslingy. Like, that's not the technical term, but you know what I mean. And the industry had come to have such a poor reputation. So I think it was more trying to make a disreputable industry respectable again.
Make newspapers great again.
Yes.
Just as a side note, it's funny how many people like get angry at that slogan, "Make America Great Again." I know it's because it's only because it's associated with Trump, but it's funny how many people are like, "No, America's terrible," or "No, it's always been great."
Vote
and then they complain about stuff that America's done or is doing, or conditions that it has that need to be fixed.
Yeah. Generally, people who are angered by that slogan agree with the underlying sentiment, but they just associate it with Trump.
Or they'd agree with the underlying sentiment. Or no, it's more like keep America bad. They acknowledge that it can be great, but don't want it changed. Let's elect politicians that don't do anything. Keep doing that.
Although, if you come from the perspective that things have gotten better over the course of the past several decades, and there's some significant ways in which they have, then the Make America Great Again comes off as a reactionary attempt to undo what's happened over the past few decades.
Well, yes, because Trump is a white supremacist.
But he's clearly trying to undo the civil rights movement.
When he was talking about the horde of rats in Baltimore, he was talking about people. And not the statistic that it's the city with the most rat infestations by the CDC or something.
Is that true?
I think so. It was like up there. But it's like, if you like see that tweet and it's like, he's talking about people, like, doesn't that make you the racist?
It might. I think they interpret everything he says with the assumption that he is racist. So whenever he says something, they try to find the racist angle. And if he says something disparaging about a predominantly black city, then it's really easy to imagine how he's racist.
Okay, yeah, but, like, there's so little self-awareness there.
Yeah.
Anyway, enough about that. What's our main topic today?
Our main topic this week is the universal basic income.
The universal basic income.
Yes, there's only one because it's
only
universal.
One. It's yes.
So, you said that you haven't really thought about it before Yang?
Well, I've heard, like, it's not that so much that haven't really thought about it, but I've heard some studies and stuff that they've done. I'm for it because, like, there's a lot of people that a couple $100 could mean the difference between living paycheck to paycheck and, let me rephrase that. Like, there's a lot of people who go to, like, lending places because they can't live paycheck to paycheck, so they have to, if they get paid every 2 weeks, maybe they have to get a loan every other week. And universal basic income would really help with that. Just a couple extra $100. It doesn't even have to be 1,000. I'm already assuming these people are on welfare. It's just a couple extra $100. Yes, but if you're rich, then that doesn't affect you.
Right.
And
you'd have to be really rich.
Past a certain point.
Past a certain point, $1,000 a month is insignificant.
Yeah, and that point is around $75,000. After that, having more money does not significantly impact your life.
Oh, you're discussing from a happiness perspective.
Yes. Okay. Well, it's more happiness, and that's where I was headed with that angle of, like, the rich people. But maybe they could save up for a house or something. I don't know. But or medical expenses. That's always a thing.
If you have an income in the millions of dollars, it's probably insignificant. But I would think for
it's definitely insignificant.
Right, but I would think for $75,000 a year, an extra $12,000 a year would be significant. The difference between 75 and 87. And
I think it's kind of like there should be something sort of like a tax bracket where, but it's like just yes or no, where if you're making 7 figures, you don't need $1,000 a month.
Oh, I disagree with that.
Why?
Well, then it's not universal. The whole point of the universal basic income is that it's universal, so it's contrasted to welfare. At least that's how I think of it. I've supported a universal basic income for several years now, and the main argument for me is that it is a better alternative to welfare. So I support a universal basic income if and only if it replaces welfare, which under Yang's plan it would.
Yeah.
But the welfare creates a poverty trap where you have that cutoff.
Well, that's why I said 7 figures. I think you're not on welfare if you're making 7 figures a year.
Yeah, but then there's inflation and things change.
Yeah.
It becomes a temporary reprieve.
Suddenly being a millionaire, you're the next year taxes change, and then you're living on the streets.
In 100 years, making $1 million a year probably won't be that significant.
Obviously, they'd
assuming
have to
a
update
consistent rate of inflation.
You're not going to keep the same minimum wage from 1810 when there wasn't any.
When did minimum wage first pass?
I think early 1900s.
I think so. I think it was originally like a few cents an hour.
That's what I'm talking about. You're not making 2 cents an hour currently. They want to make the minimum wage $33 now that it's passed to $15.
I'm not surprised. Oh,
in
$33.
major cities, except Chicago. It's the expensive cities. Well, Chicago's pretty expensive because that's just
expensive.
because we have corrupt politicians and massive taxes. But
yeah,
a lot of California cities and New York want to do 33.
See, I think the universal basic income is also a good alternative to minimum wage. I think the universal basic income has... Basically, there's a lot of things that we've done to make sure that people don't starve to death. And the universal basic income can replace all of them, and all of those other things have some pretty serious unintended consequences. Like, for example, when you raise minimum wage, you also raise unemployment. Or with welfare, it creates a poverty trap.
Or if you don't raise wait, no, you said that already. I was going to say automation, but that's why.
Right.
It's one of the reasons why. Either someone's doing 2 persons worth of jobs, or it's now a robot.
I think the underlying driver is automation, and I think that people think of it in a futuristic sense when we've already automated away a lot of jobs. We already had automated away a lot of jobs 50 years ago.
Yeah, I think a lot of people know about, like, factory work and stuff, but let's see, what's one? Oh, Yang was talking about truckers.
Right.
That's scary. I don't want that. I don't think that that an AI should be able to control, like, okay, a car is 2 tons, right?
Sure.
I don't know. But that's like kind of what it is in my mind. A huge truck filled with, like,
bricks.
Yes, a truck carrying bricks, because, you know, that's what trucks carry, I guess. The truck carrying ice cream, let's say. I don't want an AI to control that.
Oh, I do.
Why?
Because it would be so much more efficient. It would lower the cost of transportation and thus increase our capacity to produce wealth and generally improve the productivity of our economy.
See, I'm not against that in theory, but knowing how much goes wrong with just, like, running a computer, there's so much wrong there. Like, if they hired a guy to be, like, a co-pilot, okay, why don't they have automated planes? They basically already do. But they also have 2 people as backups, right?
That's true.
It's like, if they do that with planes...
But the pilot and co-pilot are mostly for landing and takeoff.
Yes.
Which has not yet been successfully automated.
Right, and it seems if they can't get that right, I don't have faith that they're going to get a fully automated, you know, driving system 100% right.
Self-driving
and it has to be 100%.
No,
99.99.
It has to be better than humans. There's a certain amount of human error that already exists.
Right.
So if you're saying it has to be 100% perfect, then you're comparing it to a false ideal. It just has to be better than people, and it already is better than people. Statistically, I don't know about the trucks, but statistically, a self-driving car is less likely to cause an accident than a car driven by a human. It's just every time it does, it makes headlines because it's so novel, and then people are like, oh, that's unsafe, I'm scared. And then regulators come in and they're like, oh, we don't want this on the roads. It might be unsafe. But it's already safer than a human-driven car. And I would imagine it would be approximately the same with trucks. I don't know the specifics when you transfer from car to truck, but it should be pretty easy to get a truck that's safer, an automated truck that's safer than a truck driver. Now, truck drivers are professional drivers.
Yeah.
So they're probably safer drivers than the average driver.
Yeah.
So it would have to have a higher threshold.
It's really hard to drive a truck.
It is really hard to drive a truck.
And dangerous.
And the AI will be able to do it. And then people won't have to do these hard, dangerous jobs that are really bad for their bodies.
I meant it's more dangerous for other drivers. Like, if you clip another car with a truck, like, you're taking off half their car and not getting a scratch.
Once again, the AI only has to be better than the human driver, than the average human driver. If the AI is better than the average human driver, then you're actually increasing safety.
Sure, but I don't think that it's at that point yet.
I think it's pretty close. I don't know. I haven't looked into trucks, just cars. But I would imagine seeing that self-driving cars are safer than human-driven cars, I would expect it to be pretty close with trucks. And then he also talks about call center workers. Like, there's all these jobs that are about to be automated, but there's also a lot of jobs that have been automated.
Yeah, call centers.
That's why we have so many people on welfare and so many people on disability. It's because we've had a labor surplus. We've had more people who want to work than jobs since the 1920s. It's the main thing that was behind the Great Depression, and we solved it by instituting things like welfare. So we essentially paid people...
That's not solving it.
Well, we essentially paid people not to work. Now you don't... Now people aren't starving, and it doesn't look... Because if people aren't looking for work because they're on welfare, then they don't count towards the unemployment numbers. So the numbers look good. So there's that cosmetic element, but also people aren't starving to death. Like, that's the main problem with not having enough jobs, is that there's the risk of people starving to death. And they're getting a welfare check and they're not starving to death. But welfare has some nasty side effects.
Welfare's racist.
Okay.
Just wanted to make sure you knew.
Well, there was a racist element back in the 30s in its implementation. But that might be a can of worms.
They ask you what race you are on the form, therefore you're racist.
For statistical purposes, I imagine?
It's racist. I think I said you're racist, but it reminds me of how people are upset that they ask you if you're a citizen on census, on the new census forms.
Well, they're not going to in 2020.
Why?
So speaketh the Supreme Court.
Oh, that they decided on that?
Yeah, the Supreme Court ruled that they can't.
That makes no sense. How could you collect data on everyone who lives in the country if you don't know if they're a citizen or not? Idiots!
I think that it's reasonable to include a citizenship question, but
it's necessary. That's the entire point of the
it's
form.
Not necessary. It hasn't been on the census for several decades.
Well, yeah, but that's because you kind of assume
the
that the person's a citizen, and then have them fill out all this other stuff.
No, there's been immigrants the whole time. There's always been immigrants.
Well, yeah, but I don't know. I've never filled out a census. Actually, I think I must have. When was the last time? 2010?
2010. I
was
didn't.
at college. I don't remember.
Yeah, we were at college, and I don't believe we did.
No, we didn't.
But going to this year...
Thanks, college. Maybe I did by mail or something.
I think it's one census form per household, and as a college student, you'd be part of your parents' household.
Yeah, that's it. You're right. I remember now, because I think my mom called me about something. Anyway,
the citizenship hasn't been on the census since, I think, 1950. And obviously there were immigrants during that time, because this is America, and there have always been immigrants. And it didn't seem to matter.
They took it off during the 50s?
I guess so.
That seems like a weird time to take it off.
They decided that they didn't care.
There could have been Russians.
There could have been Russians. Well, okay, should we put on the census, are you a Russian spy?
No, not Russian.
Natural born citizen.
Chechnyan legal citizen. My parents live here since 1949. I was born here. 8 years old. Are you drinking vodka? No, is potato liquor.
Is American.
That's what vodka's made out of, right? Potatoes?
Yeah. Or beets.
Beets. That seems weird. Anyway, that was a tangent.
Yes, it was. We were discussing the universal basic income.
Yeah.
So, to me, the main purpose of the universal basic income is to replace all of these complicated programs that people don't really understand, and people don't really understand the detrimental effects of these programs with a single universal basic income that it's really simple. Everyone gets this. And also it fits in more with liberal principles of equality before the law because everyone gets $1,000 a month or whatever it is. Obviously it's going to have to go up with inflation, but everyone gets this amount no matter what. Like, if you are a U.S. citizen, you get this money. It doesn't matter if you make $1 billion a year or if you're unemployed. It doesn't matter your race. It doesn't matter your sex. Nothing. Everyone gets this.
You mean your gender?
Well, I actually meant sex, but your gender doesn't matter either.
Okay, good. I thought you were a transphobe for a second. I'm glad you weren't. I would have had to take out my gun here and shoot you. Yeah, I agree in theory, but something about giving $1,000 to people who don't need it, like I said, who make 7 figures, it's literally a drop in the bucket.
Right, and there aren't that many people making that much, so we might as well stick by the
more
principle.
than you think.
People making 7 figures?
Mm-hmm.
That's significantly less than 1% of the population.
Yes. It's like 0.1%.
Okay, so
which is...
So are we going to abandon...
What's the population of the U.S.?
About 350 million.
That's it?
Yeah.
Alright, so you got 3.5 million there? Making millions?
No, that would be 1%.
Okay, so 350,000?
350,000. So, are we really going to abandon the core principle that's behind the universal basic income to save $1,000, to save giving $1,000 a month to 350,000 people?
That's 35 million. I'm bad at math. Is that 35 million or 350 million?
It would be 350 million. So we're saving $350 million a month by...
That's a dollar for every American.
Yeah. Yeah, so every American saves $1 a month by not... Like...
Okay, whatever.
I think it's more... Because that threshold can be tinkered with in the future. Like, I want to keep it as simple as possible. That's part of the point.
Yeah, you're right.
It's really simple. Right. Everyone can understand it, and then no one's going to tinker with it in the future. Because there's no knobs with which you can tinker.
Do you see this as something that you just automatically get in the mail or straight to your bank account or whatever? Or do you have to apply for it like literally every other thing in the government?
Ideally, they would scrap all welfare.
That's not going to happen.
And, well, the argument behind $12,000 a year, which Yang doesn't really stick to because he wants to keep healthcare-related programs going, but if you scrapped all of welfare, then the money that you would save would be enough for a $12,000 a year universal basic income. So it would be cost neutral to replace it.
Unless they had Medicare for all, or yes.
Yeah, he's got a Medicare for all thing.
Unless they had that, then like for me, I think I calculated it once. Just getting my medicine, it's like $40,000 a year. I couldn't do that on my own or with UBI. I would have to have disability. Well, I guess I would have to have Medicare, but that's how I get my my medical insurance. Like, that's a crazy amount to just
that is a
suddenly
crazy
have
amount.
to deal with.
And there's a lot of underlying problems with our healthcare system.
Yeah.
And they're problems that, for the most part, well, actually, I don't think I've heard any of the politicians discussing the actual problems because that doesn't sell. But
also lobbyists.
Right. But the actual problems have to do with intellectual property laws.
I want to lobby against lobbyists.
The anti-lobby lobby?
Well, also, most of the medicine that I can get generic, I do. And I think it's all but 2 now. All but 2. That's a lot of medicine. It's 2 out of 5. Jesus. Yeah, so that's a lot.
That is a lot, and that is unfortunate. Also, there need to be, but this is really unrelated to the universal basic income, but there need to be reforms to healthcare and to intellectual property laws.
Yes.
So that companies can't extend patents practically indefinitely and create government-enforced monopolies.
Well, a lot of medicine is really easily reverse engineered, which is why there's generic versions of it.
Right, but then when they have the patents, they can sue those people to make them stop, because the patent guarantees them a monopoly.
Yeah, you're right.
That's the real issue. Like the EpiPen, where it costs
that's just the scummiest thing in the world.
Well, it's the best illustration of the underlying
$4,000 a thing, right?
And it costs like $2 to make, and the only reason they can do that is because they have a patent. But this is something that they've had for decades, and it's because they keep renewing the patent by making superficial changes to the EpiPen, and then they're like, oh, we need to patent this improvement, and that gives us a renewal of our
generation.
Yeah.
This one's got fire stripes across the sides.
Okay, so that's fine.
Looks real cool.
You can patent your 7th generation fire stripes, but at this point, the 6th generation should be public domain, and anyone should be able to make the 6th generation. And then...
So does it work that way?
It doesn't work that way. Because
otherwise the market would be flooded with ones that people could afford.
Right, I'm saying it needs to work that way. You shouldn't be able to have a patent indefinitely. That's a monopoly, and it allows you to ignore market forces. Well, you need to be able to have free market competition and people making generic alternatives, and if you want to spend $2,000 for the brand name, cool, but you could get the off-brand for $5.
Yeah, I think you should be able to patent some things like...
Right, but the patent shouldn't last
That's
indefinitely.
an example, but you shouldn't be able to... Like, if somebody reverse engineers that, which shouldn't be that hard, I'm imagining, and they make a superficial change, you shouldn't be able to sue them, because it's like it uses larger ball bearings, or I don't know how that works. Some part is a different size, or it's got a tapered valve or something. Whatever. If it's like close enough to be the same thing and still work, but it's obviously different. Like, what's the name of that song? There's a song by Queen, and it's got a really distinctive bass line, and then Vanilla Ice used the same bass line, and Queen sued them, or maybe there was another person. There's a third person in there, and I don't remember where they fit in, but Anyway, one of them sued the other, and they won because like it was a different beats per minute or something like that, or like they had an extra note in, but it was like the most distinctive thing in the world. It was like doo 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 doo. You know that song?
No.
Okay, well, that's why you're an uncultured swine.
One of the many reasons.
Yeah, so I would support replacing all of the various types of welfare in favor of UBI if it was, like, there's some reasons why the welfare exists, varieties exist in certain ways like that, or like food stamps, you can't pay for a new phone when you have that.
But they should be able to.
Why?
Because it's their money. They should get to choose how they spend their money.
It's to feed their 5 kids, not to, you know, somehow they already have a phone already, but it's not to buy stuff, it's to buy food, right?
Well, the government shouldn't be going around telling people how to spend their money. If we need a redistribution program,
I agree.
It should redistribute money, and then people choose how they spend it.
Okay, let me give a better example. You can't buy alcohol or cigarettes with food stamps.
Okay, well, you should be able to.
So,
you should be able to buy alcohol or tobacco with your UBI. If you want, you should be able to take your UBI to the casino and gamble it all away.
That's a terrible idea, but yeah.
That sounds like a very bad idea, but it's yours to do what you want with.
Well, my point is, if you have this starving family and you're like, oh, I have a starving family, please give me money. And they're like, all right, here's your food stamps. And then they're like, all right, I'm going to go blow it on high-quality gin and cigarettes. Like, there's a reason that they can't do that. It's built into the system. And I'm not saying that, like, you shouldn't be able to do that under UBI, but, like, there's a lot of different types of welfare, and each of them comes with their own sort of system to avoid abuse.
All right, and I think that's the problem. It's way too complicated. We live in a democracy, so our social programs need to be things. We live in a
society.
Oh, so our social programs need to be things that the average voter can understand by spending maybe an hour a week keeping up to date with political news because they have other things to do in their lives. They're not full-time politicians. And this is a complex mess of systems that basically no one can understand, unless you're a professional social worker. And we need to...
Oh, they don't understand it either, trust me.
We need to drastically simplify it, and a single universal basic income to replace all of those programs would be much easier for people to understand. Right? They know what the universal basic income is because as citizens they get it, and they know what they're paying in taxes. And it's straightforward.
I agree, but there would need to be some kind of healthcare system in place, because that's what things like disability and Medicaid. Is it
I think
Medicaid
disability gives
which
you
one's
money.
the old person one? Medicare?
I think Medicare, and then Medicaid.
Yeah, because aid is like, oh, I need aid.
Right. And I think disability is giving you money because you can't work.
Yes, but you also get Medicaid.
Okay.
So there would, I would agree to wipe out all those systems in place if there was a way to get.
That's
it
basically
doesn't even need
that's
to
basically
be,
Yang's proposal.
It doesn't even need to be Medicaid for all. It's just like, find a way to prove that you need it.
All right, I think Ying has a Medicare for all plan.
I don't like Medicare for all because that's just government system.
He has a public option plan, which is also a government system. But his... Yeah, he basically has your position there.
Very wary of the government will handle this. Like, I do not like that at all.
Scariest words in the English language. I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
Yeah. Who said that?
It came... I think it might have been a Reagan quote, but I got it from
I think
that show.
You might be right.
Designated Survivor.
Oh, yeah.
Governor of Michigan.
That was a good show. Where was I going with my mind? Now I can't stop thinking of President Jack Bauer.
Anyway, so Andrew Ying's proposal, which I think is a compromise that I'm willing to accept, is everything except for healthcare related programs. All the rest of the welfare system is wiped out and replaced with the universal basic income. And then you've got the healthcare. But then he wants people to have to sign up for it. And basically, if you opt in, you're ineligible for welfare, so it would be a gradual transition, which I also think is reasonable. But I think ideally you'd wipe out all of welfare, and then every citizen would just get their universal basic income.
I like the opt-in thing. Because the main problem with this is that it costs a lot. And having to opt in means
it costs as much as we spend on welfare now.
No, because not everyone's on... Every citizen of the country is not on welfare. And it's more than welfare... Most people on welfare get. Do kids get the UBI?
You'd have to be 18.
Okay.
All U.S. citizens over the age of 18.
Yeah, citizens.
Right.
That's an important clarification.
That is an important clarification.
And that's also racist of him. Just want to point that out.
Racist against the race of non-citizens?
Yeah.
You know, there's two races in the world, fundamentally. U.S. citizens and non-U.S. citizens.
Well, that's the reason that they didn't want it on the census, because it was racist or something.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the word they used, but it was basically the gist of it.
Well, the idea was that it would cause...
Also, borders are racist.
It would cause immigrant communities to be undercounted because they dodged the census, because they wouldn't want to admit that they weren't citizens, even if they had a green card.
Well, they weren't asking for green card. I think it was more they'd be afraid of ICE raids than, not getting counted.
Right.
And if they're that afraid of being not counted, then, because they're illegal immigrants, then,
Yeah, I think the citizenship question
then screw them.
Reasonable.
Okay. Tried to think of a better way to put it, but there isn't.
The Supreme Court made its ruling.
It's a majority Republican now, right?
The majority Republican Supreme Court ruled against Trump on this, so I'll go along with that.
I don't like the wording of against Trump, but I would call it pro-liberal. A liberal.
Well, it was Trump's agenda to get
ruling.
the citizenship question added.
Basically,
he wanted statistics so he could say, here's the percentage of citizens and here's the percentage of non-citizens, and there's this many people taking your jobs. Which
I think it's
a stupid argument, but let him make his stupid argument.
But I don't think that's his argument, because he's for legal immigration.
He's not really.
He said he was gonna make it easier for a path to citizenship, but he hasn't really done anything about that.
He has drastically decreased legal immigration. But immigration, the only relevant thing about immigration here is that until you become a naturalized U.S. citizen, you don't get the UBI.
Yes.
And I think if you're following the legal path, I think it's 10 years of residency before you can become a citizen.
I thought it was 7 for unknown reasons.
Well, in any case, so
reasons unknown to me.
Whether it's 10 years or 7, I'm not sure. I think it's 10.
10 makes more sense.
They might have changed it.
I don't know why I thought it was 7. That's just like a random number.
In any case, then you become naturalized and you get the universal basic income because you're a U.S. citizen. But also that way you won't have people coming here just to get the universal basic income because they'd have to be here for a while first.
I don't think that there should be any kind of benefits for people who don't pay taxes, and that doesn't limit itself to illegal immigrants. That also includes scumbags.
Well, I think all U.S. citizens over the age of 18 should get the universal basic income, whether or not they're scumbags.
Well, I mean, like, you know,
for some people that might be their only income,
way to
and then they wouldn't pay taxes.
Well, yeah. Although, kind of ironically, $1,000 is the bracket at which you have to start to file taxes.
That's kind of
funny.
What
I think, isn't it?
My ideas about
if you make $1 and you take UBI, you have to
pay tax on that $1.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's hilarious. So, although you're probably more likely to get more money.
So I think
I don't know.
The standard deduction, the standard deduction should be identical to the UBI, so that U.S. citizens pay taxes on all of the money that they earn, but not on the UBI, and immigrants would get a standard.
You shouldn't pay taxes on that,
right? And immigrants would get a standard deduction equal to the UBI. So up to the amount of the UBI, they wouldn't have to pay taxes on what they earn.
Sure.
So they don't get it, but they get some benefit.
For that, yeah.
And then, so a U.S. citizen taking the UBI, if there's
a lot lower than the lowest tax bracket. I think it's.
Well, I also support a flat tax. I have a lot of tax ideas.
Okay, Charles from accounting.
I am an accountant. But anyway, that's the one that really links in with universal basic income. So, yeah, if you...
The one idea? You said the one idea you have?
That's the one tax idea that really is codependent on the universal basic income.
Clarifying what you meant by that.
Set the standard deduction to be equal to the universal basic income, and then if you take the universal basic income and earn $1 and you've got, say, a 20% tax rate, you have to pay 20 cents in tax, but you get $12,000. So you're ahead.
Seems like there's going to be a whole lot of tax evasion going on.
Unlike now?
Well, who's going to file their taxes to pay 20 cents?
Right, well, who's going to earn exactly $1? The IRS doesn't care about 20 cents.
Yeah.
It's immaterial.
Right.
If there's 10,000 people cheating the IRS by 20 cents, they don't care.
Oh, they care.
They don't care if it's less than $1. That is actually their policy.
Really?
Yeah. A dollar is their cutoff for relevance. So if you pay 70 cents less than you're supposed to in taxes, they don't care. Huh. If you pay $1 less than you're supposed to on your taxes, they do care.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, yeah, in theory, you'd have to pay 20 cents. In practice, the IRS doesn't care because it's less than $1.
Interesting.
if you make $5 in addition to the universal basic income, you better pay them your dollar.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they'll come for you like they came for Al Capone.
Yeah, that's what they were really after. They needed his tax money.
Exactly.
I wonder how much they got off of him.
Everything he owed in taxes.
Well, yeah, but how much was that?
I don't know.
Something to look up when I have the time. I need a list of things that make me curious that I have to look up. Because I'm always like, I should look that up. And then I never do because it's like a random fact. Though I do happen to know a lot of random facts. I don't know where they come from.
I believe the internet.
No, mister. Surprisingly not. They come from the ether. Out of nowhere. Did you know that those plastic things on the end of your shoelaces are called aglets?
Yes, you've told me that before.
Didn't get that from the internet. That was pre-internet days.
That was pre-internet.
Where did I get that bit of info?
I don't know, but you told me that before we had the internet.
I don't know why I know that. Why do I know that?
Couldn't say. But what I will say is that this has been the Sarcastic Centrists. I'm Charles.
I'm Nick.
If there's a topic that you want us to discuss in some future week, please leave it in the comments below.
And also, if you would like to know more about aglets, I will be happy to explain.
We could have a week where our primary discussion is aglets.
I don't think that will last very long. That'll be a short episode.
But only if lots of people want it.
Yes. Click the like on the aglets comment if there is one for the aglets episode. Alright, goodbye.
Bye.